We are dead ducks. We are sitting on the train tracks. We're having our picnic and drinking our wine. Does it really matter what time the train comes through the tunnel?
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for another visit with the one and only Rob Kirby of Kirby Analytics, kirbyanalytics.com. Rob, how are you, sir?
I am doing just fine. Thank you very much, Sean.
Hey, man, thanks for coming on. You know what? I want to talk to you about all sorts of things. At the top of my list is monetary warfare. And really my question is, has the monetary warfare gone hot with what we've seen in Tianjin and these other explosions in China, and of course one at a U.S. military base in Japan, an ammunition base. But first, let me ask you about this. Rob, last week, Zero Hedge reported that something just snapped at the Comex. And for readers who missed it, this is very important. Let me just, if I may, read this. Earlier today, we said that we would keep a close eye on today's Comex update to see if JPM reverses this adjustment and adds at least a few more tons of deliverable gold to its vault. Moments ago, we got the daily update from the Comex, and not only did JPM not reverse its registered to eligible adjustment, but more curiously, the second largest vault, that of Scotia Makata behind only HSBC, saw a comparable adjustment whereby 16,644 ounces of gold, or about half a ton, and 14% of its vault total were adjusted away from registered and into the eligible category. Now here's the takeaway for readers, guys. This is so crazy. This means that what was already a record dilution factor with over 200 ounces of paper gold claims for every 1 ounce of deliverable gold just soared even more, and following that 8% drop in inventory, there's now an unprecedented 228 ounces of paper claims for every 1 ounce of deliverable registered gold. Rob, your reaction?
Well, my reaction is that Comex, people who've been following this closely, the people that the mainstream refers to as the gold bugs or the metalheads, have known that Comex is a Ponzi scheme for a great many years. And what they've been playing is a shell game, and they seem to make a very minuscule amount of reported inventory seem like it appears in many places. There's a lot of double counting that goes on on the part of officialdom where gold stocks are concerned. It's ingrained in the system because central banks themselves double count gold, as in they make no difference in their accounting. They count gold that's been leased out and has left the vault on the same line as any gold that might be present in the vault. And this has a way of making the amount of gold available for investment purposes or for tradable purposes. It amplifies it, makes it look bigger than it really is. So the notion that Comex would be engaged in the same type of activity, well, they've only learned from the best. That's the central banks. And the gold market has been rife with criminality and fraud for a great many years now. And you know what it's really coming down to is that we used to think that the gold that's available is hiding under a shell, and they move it around. And the day might be coming in the very near future where we turn all the shells over and find out there's nothing.
Mm-hmm. And that's what it looks like. That's
what it's starting to smell like. And this has done nothing. This whole process, as it's been unfolding, has done nothing but to cast the stewardship of the Anglo-American banking edifice into very, very, very much disrepute. So that's been an ongoing thing. And what it is, it's credibility lost. And as you lose your credibility, it becomes very difficult to gain it back. So we're on a slow, greasy slope here, which could turn out to be a very, very quick plunge at some point in time, because the whole notion behind fiat currencies is that I believe it was the Dallas Fed chairman Fisher who stated a number of years ago that fiat money is a game of confidence and faith, and when the faith is broken, he inferred that all hell could break loose. But he then went on to state that the central bank community, and specifically the Fed, would resort to basically any means to maintain that faith. And maybe they're not doing such a good job at it anymore, because faith is being eroded, and at one point could go poof and disappear altogether.
Yeah, faith has been completely destroyed, and really the only people that still have faith in this system are the sheeple people that aren't paying attention. Let me read you this because I think this is pretty shocking. JPM's registered gold tumbled to a record low of just 19,718 ounces, an 86% collapse in just one day, and well under 1 ton of gold. Now, where's my smoking gun? I had it
I
here a
think
second
you're going
ago.
to read me the disclaimer.
Yeah,
The
no.
disclaimer that Dave Kranzler likes to point out every chance he gets.
What's
That
that?
the disclaimer that the Comex puts on all their data reports, that here's our inventory, and here's the movements that's occurred in our vaults, and then at the bottom of it they put a disclaimer that, basically, we don't guarantee any of the stuff that we just published. It's accurate to the best of our knowledge, but we're not really very knowledgeable people.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't trust what we say nor what we write, but take our word for it. Well, listen to this. This is the smoking gun of the article, really. JPM's dramatic adjustment also meant that total COMEX registered gold has likewise tumbled to the lowest in history of just 202,054 ounces, just over 6 tons available for delivery. We've been wondering for a long time, Rob, what does COMEX default look like? Well, it looks like a raid, okay? It looks like a raid is in progress, and they don't care at this point because they can't stem the tide. If there's just 202,000 ounces of gold left in the COMEX available for delivery, my God, think about it. A thousand ounces of gold isn't a big deal to a rich guy, right? You don't even have to be as rich as Eric Sprott to buy 1,000 ounces of gold. What are we talking about? $1 million? You only need 200 millionaires in this country to stand for delivery to clean out the COMEX. 202 millionaires wipes it out. I mean, that's stunning. 202,000 ounces is all they have left.
Well, that's if they even have that. I mean, at the end of the day, the number of thousands of ounces that they claim to have, Sean, might actually have 8 or 10 owners, or might have 200 owners, and you see, and that's the whole essence of what's transpired in our capital markets in general, as the stewardship of the world's reserve currency, the financial elites in America, in conjunction really with big players in Europe, have sought to make people believe that money can continue to be printed and cooked up out of thin air, and I guess, in the famous words of Dick Cheney, deficits don't matter, as he once said to Treasury Secretary Paul O'Neill years ago. And I guess we're really starting to find out, and the rubber's really hitting the road now, that deficits really do matter. Mind you, maybe not yet in the case of the United States, but we certainly know that deficits do matter in Greece, and we do know that they matter in places like Italy and Ireland and Spain and Portugal and France. And one would think at some point they will matter also in places like Germany, and you'd have to think ultimately that deficits will matter in the United States. So it's just a matter of time. And the whole concept of just a matter of time is also applicable to the COMEX, in that at some point, it's long been speculated by the gold bugs that at some point the demand for physical metal would overwhelm the paper promises for metal, and which would bring about the ultimate demise of the paper exchanges, being Comex and London. And ultimately, in my view, we will see these entities declare force majeure and settle up everybody in fiat money. And people who thought they had large exposure to precious metal, when such an event occurs, we'll be basically left with a bag full of fiat money, and there will be no metal for sale.
And
That's
it's
going to present a problem for some people.
Well, yeah. Now think about this, because back in 2010, GATA's Adrian Douglas had done the quantifiable research on this and put out some reports about the fact that the bullion banks are leveraged roughly 54 to 1, right? 54 ounces of hypothecated or paper gold against every 1 ounce of physical in the vault. And then he construed a price in the real value of gold from there, which was tens of thousands of dollars. Now we're in 2015 and we're seeing 228 paper claims for 1 ounce of gold at the Comex. God only knows how bad it is at the bullion banks. And the fact of the matter is that when we say got physical, it's really not a cliche, right? We're really asking the question to readers and to listeners: do you have physical? Because if you don't, you're gonna be screwed. If you don't have physical, you're gonna be toast.
Well, exactly, literally, if you can't touch it or go touch it and physically pick it up, you likely won't own any.
Yeah.
So this is where we're headed. This is how this sordid story will end. And it's a shame that we've had to go down this road, and it's a shame that we've had the mainstream financial press basically acting as the ministry of truth for our ruling elites, and they're derelict in their duties to accurately report news, and if anything, they're peddling disinformation. The analyst community in the mainstream are a bunch of complicit. I don't know. I want to call them complicit cadavers, because as far as I'm concerned, they're dead and useless, and completely. They're a disgrace to their profession.
Yeah.
They're a disgrace to humanity, and but that seems to be what we get. It's amazing how the capital markets tend to attract some of the best and some of the very worst in humanity. And right now, I'd say the worst are really showing their colors.
Yeah, the Mockingbird media is complicit. That is 100% true. They're complicit in these crimes, and many of them are CFR members. Many of them make many millions of dollars a year to spew government talking points and government propaganda, and they do it very well. Let me ask you this: you remember the movie Dog Day Afternoon?
I remember the movie, but you'd have to refresh me
Yeah,
of the.
that was the young Al Pacino, and they were doing a bank heist, and it was a bank heist gone wrong. And you remember all the movies back in the day about bank heists, and the funny thing about robbing a bank is that it's a federal crime. And I think I read a statistic once, Rob, where the average bank robber gets away with like $5,000 in fiat. Can you imagine a more insane crime these days than stealing fiat money, paper, from a bank? I'll tell you a much better heist. This comes to me from my friend Peter and another SGT report reader. We posted this. This comes from your neck of the woods up there near the port of Montreal. A silver heist mystery continues after empty shipping container found. And the heist here, in this case, wasn't over fiat, Rob. It was over 16 tons of physical silver, which is still missing after a brazen theft from Port of Montreal. So some of the robbers out there are wising up. They don't want Federal Reserve notes. They want physical silver or gold.
Oh, and isn't it interesting that you mentioned that episode? I read that article, I believe, last week about the heist in Montreal. You see what's likely to flow from this event, the kind of coverage that the mainstream will give to precious metal on the back of this. You'll likely find someone like CNBC or CNN trying to contact, because they've done this to me in the past. The last time CNBC, I think, tried to contact me, they wanted me to go on, and this was about 7 or 8 years ago. They wanted me to go on one of their shows and talk about and comment on the notion that physical precious metal is becoming the method of payment du jour for people in the drug business and the international crime syndicates. So not only do they not want to paint an accurate picture of what precious metals all about, they want to, if anything, put the picture in everybody's head that when you're dealing in physical precious metal, you're dealing in the realm of criminals, and every attempt is made to demonize it whenever possible.
Yeah.
And I bring that up as an aside because I won't be shocked at all if we see this come in the next week or so. A nice attempt to try and demonize basically physical precious metal.
Yeah.
Because make no mistake, Sean, I think we've even maybe mentioned this before. The day that the system blows up, it's my view, and it's been my long-held view, that officialdom will try to blame the gold bugs on the demise of the financial system, which, and this is so ludicrous. This is like a drunk behind the wheel trying to blame the distiller of spirits for them, being absolutely hammered driving a car.
It's like blaming those who built the Twin Towers for putting them where they did for 9/11. I mean,
Sure.
It's ridiculous. And I'll tell you the other thing that's funny is that they've tried to pull the same crap with their cashless society move. They're trying to move towards a cashless society under the argument that illegal drugs, prostitution, all this terrible stuff happens with cash. So if we only banned cash, that would solve the problem. And the other joke, and it's a joke, is this precious metals. If they're going to come after the gold bugs, then they better put China at the top of the list. And the other thing is that two of the biggest criminal banks on the planet, HSBC and JPM, control SLV and GLD. So, they try to talk it out both sides of their faces, but anybody with a pulse and a brain knows that they're full of you-know-what.
Well, absolutely. And not only that, I mean, banks like HSBC, we know are in bed with the people that actually do the drugs.
Yeah, they actually launder the drug money.
They launder the drug money.
On the record.
Sure they do.
On the record.
Because they paid fines for doing so. Yep. And that's not a theory, that's a fact.
No, that's 100% fact. When I say it's a criminal bank, I mean HSBC in particular is probably the most criminal bank on planet Earth. I mean, I think it's pretty documentable. I mean, they were, I believe, involved in the opium wars. I mean, they're truly a criminal bank. And, for them to be a custodian of, is it the GLD? I always get it mixed up. I think it's the GLD, and JPM is the custodian for the SLV, is just a joke. I'll tell you what, folks, if you don't want to be standing in line with the paper promise, get your money out of those precious metal ETFs. You'll be standing in line for a very long time waiting for your physical when those go down.
I couldn't agree more.
So let me ask you this, Rob. Monetary warfare. I've talked to Bill Holter about this. I've been watching the work coming out of Natural News and Mike Adams. What do you make of what happened in Tianjin, China with that absolutely nightmarish explosion a few weeks back? And what do you make of the other explosions that we've been seeing that, so far many of them are unexplained by Chinese officials?
Well, we've seen two of them in China, and then we've seen one at an American military facility in Japan. And, is three of these sort of catastrophic explosions coincidental? People who believe in coincidences might say so, but I have to scratch my head. I can't say I have inside knowledge as to what really happened, but let's just say it's not gone unnoticed, and there's a whole lot of people that are even ostriches who take their head out of the sand or other dark places on rare occasions, usually probably just to eat. I think maybe even those ostriches are starting to scratch their heads a little bit, or they should be, because what is it? Fool me once, and then fool me twice, or and then there's something about if you fool me three times.
Fool me, foolish, won't get fooled again. George Bush.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Well, there's been a lot of fooling going on.
There's been a lot of fooling going on. Well, I just wonder if this monetary war has turned hot, and many of us are believing that it has turned hot. And, whatever happened in Tianjin, and I'll continue to maintain this and took a lot of heat for it early on, I said was unconventional. I don't know if it was a micro nuke, a mini nuke. I don't know if it was a kinetic-based weapon, a space-based weapon, as Mike Adams has reported. But there seems to be a consensus especially since it has been up to this point unexplained officially by the Chinese government, and they're trying to clamp down on all information in Tianjin. It seems to me that what happened in Tianjin was unconventional. It wasn't a
Well,
conventional explosion. It devastated so much area.
I just look at it really from more so than anything, Sean. I look at it from a timing standpoint because it
Yeah.
happened literally days after China devalued their currency,
Yep.
and that sort of stuck out in my head very, very loud and clear, and it's just been the growing commentary regarding China. It seems to me that, you see, in our media, China was our best friend 3 years ago, and our lamestream financial press was basically heaping accolades on them, hanging on their every pronouncement about the health of their economy. And now it seems that everything China says and does it casts them as the enemy. Just as the our mainstream press in general seems to not let a day go by without trying to demonize Vladimir Putin and try to cast him as the instigator of all things in the Ukraine, which, thanks to the likes of Victoria Nuland, we know that isn't quite the way things really were there.
Mm-hmm.
But our mainstream press is brutal. Listen, our mainstream press today, Sean, makes the press of the old former Soviet Union, which I was taught in school to laugh at and make ridicule of. Our mainstream press today makes these people look like top flight investigative reporters.
Yeah.
So we're living in an upside down world. Upside down things happen in an upside down world. It's Alice in Wonderland. Is really the my broad definition or my broad description of what we're witnessing and experiencing in our capital markets. Let's just say that everything fundamentally that I learned about economics in university has all been thrown to the wind. In the case of precious metals, for people who don't understand, economic theory, basic economics teaches you that as demand increases, price goes up, and impinges on supply. And if you don't get a supply response to the increased price, then prices can go up rapidly. What we're seeing in the precious metals market is the increase to, or the reaction to increased demand is lower price and tighter supply, and which is greeted with still lower prices again, which is met with increased demand again and more impingement on supply. And coincidentally, what this has all meant, where the rubber hits the pavement, is that we now have I'm going to speak in Canadian dollar terms, if I may. You've got a price of silver spot in Canadian dollars right around $19, and to buy a Canadian silver maple, you got to pay over $24.40. So you're looking at premiums now of 25% over spot to buy investment grade bullion products. Certainly in the coin realm, small bars are starting to disappear now at the retail level, and the real shortages haven't yet appeared with the biggest premiums on the investment, or like on the big bars, like a 1,000-ounce bar of silver. They can still be had at lesser premiums over the spot price, but we're starting to see tightness right across the spectrum. On all retail product, and there's been a lot of talk that the reason for this is simply because there's been a shortage of blanks of which the coins are minted from,
Hmm.
and I don't really buy that so much so, because we've heard recently from the likes of the chap who runs the Sunshine Mint, who provides a lot of the blanks for one of the top three suppliers, I believe, of blanks for the U.S. Silver American Eagles. And this chap said recently that they had increased their production capacity by a factor of 3 since 2007.
Yeah,
So
I think they're
there's been,
producing 80 million ounces a year now, something like
yeah.
that.
So
Yeah.
it's like all I'm saying is that there's been a lot of capacity added to the system, and this tripling of capacity to provide the product in the last 7 or 8 years,
Hmm.
and it still isn't close to being enough to supply what's required, and we've got wait times now. Even if you decide to get physical now, and if you decide to, or that you want to buy, a few thousand silver American Eagles or silver Maple Leafs, wait times are now up to like 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks in a lot of cases to get them.
Yeah, and there's
So,
only 2% of the public, maybe 1 or 2% of the public is actively seeking physical precious metal. Wait till it's 5%. Wait till it's 10% of the active public actually wanting to get physical precious metals once they wake up. If you think
and,
things are bad now, right? I
well,
mean, there's still
that's
faith in the dollar. Wait till faith in the dollar collapses and hyperinflation starts to come to our shores.
well, that's between now and then. There will be a declaration of force majeure, in my view, by the exchanges, and
Hmm.
in my view, at that point in time, you will not be able to secure physical precious metal for fiat money.
Yeah. Hey, I want to
That's
Oh, go ahead.
that's in our near future, I believe now.
Well, I think it is too. And of course, John Williams from shadowstats.com has been very consistent in maintaining his theory and his thesis that hyperinflation will hit the United States, will hit the dollar in 2016. So he may. What if he's off by a year? What if he's off by 2 years? It does appear to be coming now. And Jeff Nielsen from Bullion Bulls Canada says it can't be stopped. Of course, that's what John Williams also says. I want to circle back to something you said about China in the press placating China. I want to play a clip for you guys in a second that I think you'll all enjoy. But as it relates to China now selling treasuries, you made your Alice in Wonderland reference, and it seems to me that the sheeple people in this country, maybe in Canada too, Rob, are so bitterly clinging to their normalcy bias that it defies belief at this point. Because if you're paying attention at all, you know that China has now openly said and warned Washington they're liquidating their treasuries. And still the sheeple refuse to go down the rabbit hole. Alice in Wonderland. Why won't the sheeple go down the rabbit hole, Rob? Because it's at their own peril that they won't.
Yeah. Well, listen, outside of the Federal Reserve, China's the biggest holder of U.S. government securities on the planet, and they say that they're in sell mode, and they've also there have been reports on amounts that they've liquidated in the last number of weeks. And isn't it incredible, Sean, how 10-year yields haven't even moved?
Mhm.
Which tells me, by the way, that QE4 is already underway.
Yeah.
The Fed is monetizing, and is actively engaged, in my view, in a stealth QE4 already. When they're going to get around to officially admitting that they're doing QE4, I don't know. But anyway, such is life, and which just means another pile of fiat money is being created, and sure makes me feel good holding a little bit of physical precious metal. I sleep very well with it,
Yeah.
even with the volatility.
Yeah, well, it's been a rough 3, 4 years, but I'll tell you what, for those of us who have said, hey, this is an opportunity to stack more, that's never been more true. People that have shored up their physical reserves in the last 3 to 4 years, 5 years, can look back at this as a gift, because this hyperinflation is now baked in the cake. Because the buyer of last resort, as China liquidates their treasuries, is the Fed. They may be doing so behind the scenes. They may be doing it rogue. They may have QE4 already in place, but the buyer of last resort is the Fed. And God help us. I mean, God help us when this thing finally snaps, Rob, because it's going to be ugly. And I want to circle back here to that clip I was telling you about. You're right that the press has been placating China for a very long time. The U.S. press has been placating China and playing nice with China because we could not afford for China to sell their treasuries. And now China is selling their treasuries. And let me play this clip. We'll walk down memory lane here because I think it's very fascinating, a couple of things that were said in this clip, because those things that were said then are happening now. Right now I got to find this. Let me play it for you.
I think people should be careful what they wish for on China. You know, if China were to revalue its currency, or China is to start making, say, toys that don't have lead in them or food that isn't poisonous, their costs of production are going to go up. And that means prices at Walmart here in the United States are going to go up too. So I would say China is our greatest friend right now. They're keeping prices low and they're keeping prices.
Did you hear that, Rob?
Well, yeah, no, I heard that.
Did you hear that clip about China? Because you have to realize, people have to realize, everything that they buy at Target, everything they buy at Walmart, and when I say everything, I mean 95, 98% of the goods that they purchase at those retail stores comes from China. What happens when the dollar hyperinflates? What happens when China doesn't want to export their goods to us anymore? What happens to our standard of living when this thing all goes bye-bye? It's going to be dark, and the mainstream media was placating China then because we couldn't afford for China to not play ball with us, and now China's not playing ball.
Yeah, but you know what, Sean? It you know, to try to stick it all on China is sort of in my view anyway, at least it's misplaced blame, because if you want to start talking about the blame game, why don't we start at home?
Oh, absolutely.
You know, because at home, you know, the motto for America, at least as I was taught growing up, was, you know, truth, justice, and the American way. And what we see now in our capital markets makes a mockery of that statement, and which is a shame. And you know, and if you just remember this quote, because this sort of, in my view, encapsulates the whole shooting match. If you got a business, you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how does that play on you, Sean, as an American?
It plays very poorly for me because I'm not a communist and I'm not a Marxist and I can't stand those who are. But I'll tell you this, too. There's $8.5 trillion missing from the Pentagon. Okay, so if we want to play the blame game, you're absolutely right. The only reason I bring up China is because China was our last resort. China buying the bonds, holding the bonds, playing ball with the treasuries was our last resort, the buyer of last resort. So now, once China's gone, the Ponzi scheme ends.
Well, they were cast in that role by our duplicitous mainstream media.
Yep, they were. Just like the Saudis were with the petrodollar in 1971. I mean, it was created. It was a created paradigm, and
sure.
And that petrodollar paradigm is now breaking.
Sure. Yeah. And now just for listeners who don't know, it was the leader of America, or the president of the United States. It was Barack Obama who uttered the words, "If you have a business, you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen." So this is the directive coming from the chief executive of the United States of America, and this I take that as as a very, very deep insult. And what it shows me, and what it just absolutely brackets and highlights for me, is how far off the rails the stewardship of not only America, but our it's so consistent with the poor stewardship and poor guidance that's been exercised in the maintenance of the world's reserve currency. So, though that utterance by Mr. Obama is so consistent with what's occurred in our financial universe, with what's been done to economics as a science, with what's been done by the Keynesian-minded central banking community, because they're acting in lockstep, and what they are uttering, and their proclamations are utter tripe and fly in the face of anything resembling rationality, decency, and the concept of fair play.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
that's the
mean,
world we live in.
that's right. Well, he's inciting class warfare when he says that. That's just an overt attempt to incite class warfare and to foster class warfare and to foster the Communist Manifesto, which is to take from those who have. Well, once you take everything from those who have and those who produce and give it to those who don't produce, you've destroyed the economy, and he's doing an excellent job with that. And so, yeah, I see them, Rob, inciting class warfare. I see a great attempt at inciting race wars in this country. It's the divide and conquer strategy. Look what they're doing in Europe with this refugee situation. They're going to flood Europe with these refugees, many of whom aren't from Syria but are saying they are from Syria. And it's an out-of-control situation, and it's all divide and conquer. It's all being done deliberately, and they want to crash the West ultimately as part of their New World Order agenda, and they're doing a pretty good job of it.
They certainly are. Well, listen, the model that's being adopted in Europe is basically the same Cloward and Piven strategy that's been used in America by opening the southern flank and
Mm-hmm.
and allowing unbridled immigration by Mexicans. So
Yeah.
it's the same strategy, plug and play it again, Sam.
Yeah. Well, it does stun me when it comes to liberals. I've worked with many, I know many, and they don't think things through very carefully. It's not to cast aspersions on liberals versus conservatives, because believe me, conservatives that don't recognize the neocon role in 9/11, they're not thinking things through either. I've broken my false right-left paradigm, but these liberals that want to get angry if you talk about stemming the tide of immigration at all, they think very short term because they think that you're not a generous person, when in fact the truth of the matter is you only care about your country because you see it being bankrupt. There's only so much money to be spent on social programs. There's only so much money to be spent on welfare and food stamps. There's only so much money, and we're running out. We ran out a long time ago. And so I always want to say to those liberals that can't get their minds around the topic of immigration enough to even have a conversation about it, I want to say invite them into your home. How many people can you invite into your home to sleep in your beds, to feed out of your pocketbook? When does your budget run out? There's not enough money in the world to let everybody come here, but they don't see it, and it really, really makes me crazy. How do they not see it?
Well, the reason they don't see it, Sean, is because we've had unbridled money creation, and we have had interest rates at zero for a very long time, and that gives false appearances that capital is cheap. Capital has little value, and it you see this is one of the negative consequences of interest rates at zero when they have no right being at zero, because what happens is asset misallocation starts to manifest itself on a grand scale. And this is basically a wet dream for a liberal, because liberals have, at least in my experience, have always been very keen on trying to remake the world in their own vision. And the modus operandi of most liberal regimes around the world has typically been to tax and spend. And there was a time in history when taxing and spending, without having the conscience of a free market to enforce discipline on that spendthrift attitude, it's run amok. And it used to be that if you spent too much money, your currency would come under fire, which would force interest rates up to defend the currency, which would temper the spendthrift tendencies. But we've taken that all away. You see, because now it doesn't matter how much money gets spent, at least in America, because what we're running fiscal budget deficits. I think America's running fiscal budget deficits, I believe, is still close to $1 trillion a year. And I mean, and how are they rewarded? With the stronger currencies and rates at zero.
Yeah.
You see, historically that couldn't happen.
Right.
Historically that didn't happen.
Right.
You see, and so you take it's sort of like giving someone a shot of morphine and putting them out in la la land, and then saying, and if you need more, just press the button.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're junkies.
Mm-hmm.
So, and so now we have an operational leadership that is stoned, and they're still pushing the button, and they're going to remain stoned,
Mm-hmm.
and until somebody takes the drug away.
Yeah.
And and it seems to me that when that occurs, it's not, in my view, it's not going to come from within. It's going to come from without, and it's going to take big actors on the world stage to uh, I guess the monetary authorities and the central bank heads used to like to call it taking the punch bowl away.
Yeah.
I don't think these guys are drinking anything close to punch. These guys are stoned on morphine.
Yeah, they can't take the punch bowl away either. I mean, everything's collapsing, even though there's plenty of punch. I'll tell you this other thing too. Here, these liberals are truly insane, because these are the same people that were more than happy to hear Nancy Pelosi say, "We need to pass it to see what's in it," and they were just fine with that, because they think there is just an endless supply of money to pay for everything, and they think that the dollar will never collapse. Heck, they don't even follow what's going on with the dollar. They don't follow what's going on with China selling treasuries. They don't follow what's going on with the Comex and the raid on the physical gold. There's only 202,000 ounces of physical gold eligible for delivery, ready for delivery at the Comex, and we're seeing it all unfold. And I guess what I'd ask you before we lose you here and wrap it up, Rob, is we're 10 days away from September 23rd as I post this interview, Rob. There's been a lot of talk about a really horrific September, October of this year, September 23rd being a key date. What do you see?
Well, you said it very well just a minute ago when you made the statement that we live in a world where our lawmakers, our leadership, tell us that we have to pass laws to find out what's in the law, or what's in the legislation. That is Alice in Wonderland.
Mm-hmm.
Our capital markets are Alice in Wonderland. And to think that something could very extremely topsy-turvy could occur in Alice in Wonderland isn't a stretch. And if we don't get something very topsy-turvy happening in the next couple, 2-3 weeks, in my view, doesn't diminish the fact that we're going to get a topsy-turvy event, and we're going to get something very damaging and likely very dislocating in our financial universe. It's inevitable, and it is coming. And pick a day, pick a week, pick a month, it's going to happen. So that's what I'm resigned to, and that's what I'm trying to prepare myself for.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing for a lot of people say, well, what do you do? I guess financially you get, you try to get some real stuff. From a preparedness point of view, you might want to have some storable food. From a different preparedness angle, you might want to have something to protect all the above. But I think the biggest issue, at least in my view, Sean, I think people better get their spiritual house in order,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think a lot of people are spiritually prepared for what's coming. And I think that when their paradigm is busted, and when this sure to unfold disaster blossoms in full view, I don't think a lot of people are going to be able to spiritually handle it. And I would say that's a very, very important aspect of getting right with the world.
Yeah, get right with God. I 100% agree with you, Rob. And, as far as September 23rd or putting a date on it goes, whether it's September 23rd, October 23rd, November 23rd, December 23rd, what we know for sure is that it's a finite amount of time between the collapse of the dollar and the collapse of everything that we hold dear, because the dollar is so important. It's not infinite. It's coming. And it's a finite amount of time.
The humanity is picnicking on the train tracks in front of a tunnel, and what time the train's coming is of little consequence, as long as you have your table and blankets set up on the train tracks. So we're showing no signs of moving off the tracks. We are dead ducks. We are sitting on the train tracks. We're having our picnic and drinking our wine. Does it really matter what time the train comes through the tunnel?
Yeah, not if we're still on the tracks when it comes.
Here you go.
All right. Well, Rob, thanks so much for your time. We certainly do appreciate it.
And it's been my pleasure being with you.
Guys, our guest has been Rob Kirby from CirbyAnalytics.com, and you can visit us at sgtreport.com. Real news, 24/7. We do appreciate you tuning in. Thanks, Rob.
Cheers, man.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week. Bye-bye.